In Titus 2, older women are commanded to teach what is good so they can help younger women love their husbands and children. On today's show, you'll hear from older women who will share timeless, relevant biblical wisdom and personal, profound life experiences to help answer your questions and teach what God says is good so you can be the wife and mother you were created to be. Welcome to another episode of Older Women Likewise.
Good evening. I'm Isla, and I'm solo tonight. I'm going to be presenting a lesson to you on teaching the occasional Bible class student. Tonight's study is pre-recorded, but if you would like, after you've watched and listened to the program, if you would like a PDF file of this plan, just email us at questions@olderwomenlikewise.com. And we'll get a copy of the plan sent to you. Or you certainly can get all the details from this video if you need to watch it again. I wanted to, or plan to bring this program to you all because our congregation found itself in a unique situation that we had not expected, or at least we certainly thought it was unique. But the more that I talk to people, the more I see it's not a unique situation. We don't have children who attend our Bible classes regularly. We have children, they're older children because we're an older congregation. They have children, and their children have children in some cases, but none of them live close by. And so no child regularly attends our Bible class. So we have, but what we do have are occasional Bible class students. Grandchildren will come, grandchildren will bring, or children will bring their grandchildren. We have visitors from the community. We just have, but a lot of times we just have them once. We may have them a few times. But at this point, we don't have any regular Bible class students of children. And so we were thinking, how are we going to handle this? And we'll talk some about how this, what happened and what our plan had been. I've made a PowerPoint that I hope will be helpful to you as we are working our way through this study. Again, this is a teaching plan for congregations who do not have regular children attending their classes and they're just visiting. We have basically visiting students. So our first thing I'd like to say is this is the situation of the congregation. As I said, it's older people, my age and older, a few younger, but not young, what we would call young couples. We have occasional visitors from the community, travelers through. Some of them are Christians whose children regularly attend classes. Others may not be. And we often have children who are related to our members of our congregation who come. Then as well, what our classroom plan is probably like most congregations have. We have an elder because we have an eldership. One of our elders oversees the teaching program. There is a deacon who specifically works with the teachers, classrooms, materials, does those on the practical level. We had and still have classroom materials for the various ages, classrooms as well. And one teacher was assigned to each class for a certain length of time. She prepared her materials. She was ready to teach. But what happened was during that teacher's assigned time, whether it was 3 months or 6 months, she would never have a student. She might never have any child come to her room. She had prepared, she was ready, but nothing happened. When her time was up, another teacher took her place, but often the same result. She prepared, nobody came. It was the frustration of preparation without the experience of teaching. And this was just not working for us. What would too often happen is we couldn't remember who was assigned, whose time it was, because we never had a child. So it just got very frustrating, and we didn't know where we were in the material. And a child would come and we would not be prepared. We didn't like that. We wanted to be prepared when a child came to come to a Bible class. We found, and looking at our materials, we said, well, we have lots of materials. Let's see what we can do with them. Well, most of the Bible class materials that we owned were group related, geared toward, and these are important words, continuing group of students at the same age and grade level. And so there would be a lesson and the quarter of lessons, great materials. They built on the one before, on the quarter before, or even the lesson before. And and that was great. It's wonderful when you have that continuing group of students at the same age and grade level. Teacher would establish in the same, it's continuing group, you establish your rituals and routine. You greet the students as they enter the classroom. You have an attendance charge. You encourage them to come to class regularly. You have memory verses, what we did last week, what we're doing this week. You have a lesson book with the child's name on it. He or she writes in his book, and then they have the book the next week and so forth. A lot of group activities, singing and games, some even competition, who can turn to this Bible verse first, or who knows this answer first. Wonderful materials when you have a continuing group of students at the same age. But what our classes look like, usually the visitors would be siblings. We might have a 2-year-old with a 6-year-old brother, or we might have a 4-year-old with an 8 or a 9-year-old sister. So they want to be together. They didn't want to be alone with strangers, basically. These teachers were unknown to them. And so they want, the 4-year-old wanted to be with the 8-year-old. And as a result, we would have classes of children with varying ages and grade levels. And nobody writes material for that, because that's not what we generally have. Usually, too, the teacher did not know the children. Do you regularly go to Bible class? How old are you? What grade level do you read on? If I give you this material, can you read it? You don't want to give a child something too hard or too easy. How much Bible knowledge? You don't want to assume one way or the other. So we would end up taking a good bit of time just trying to figure out where to start on the lesson. And that's what we found that it looked like. Not efficient, not effective, even with the students. What we found that we needed, the Bible class materials we needed, because we might have only one opportunity to impact this child with God's word, with the gospel, with the knowledge of God. If it was a community visitor, we can only guarantee they're there that time, not necessarily the next week and the next week. So we needed to really have something impactful. We needed a lesson that could cover a range of ages and reading abilities in the one classroom. Again, siblings like to stay together. We needed a lesson also, though, that would be appropriate for one child. If there was just the one got to be able to teach that child. Behavior issues, we don't know these children. So we needed material that would address any behavioral issue on the spur of the moment, not having to plan ahead. We needed, because we were getting this one opportunity, a self-contained lesson, and we needed it without continuity. We didn't need to, if you did or did not know that it did something before that might come before, that couldn't matter. It had to be a self-contained lesson. And we wanted also to have some follow-up lesson materials that we could send home with the child so that they could, hopefully, that the parent would work with the child and they'd have some more. Or if it's a Sunday morning and a child who's not used to coming to Bible class, and we're hoping that they will stay for worship, some materials that perhaps they can look at as they are sitting in the worship service. We had some real specific needs that we found. But we found also here are things we don't need that we get in this material: attendance chart, attendance records. It's meaningless when you have that one opportunity with a child. Memorization, prompts, and rewards. If they were to memorize it during that short time, and of course we talk about the scriptures and we read the scriptures and so forth, but we are not looking at memorization over time, over weeks, but just for that one period of time we have them. Bulletin boards for current lessons or even a current quarter. We might make a bulletin board and never be able to teach that lesson. So that was not something that we needed to do. Songbooks for children's songs. Kids don't sing by themselves. They hardly ever will sing with a teacher that's unknown to them. You might, if you had siblings, they might sing together. But we didn't need a lot with children's songs. And a lot of the books, the puzzles, other things that we had a lot of can be very distracting when it's a child coming brand new into a classroom and just looking at everything. So all of that was very distracting. So we had to change the kind of material that we used in order to teach these children. So the first thing we did, of course, was look for material that would work. We didn't find anything. Now, homeschoolers do use material for one child, absolutely, but hardly ever do you have a lesson for a 4-year-old and then the same basic material for a 10-year-old. Because by 10, you expect them to already know that you're building on the material that you've already taught them. So while we looked at homeschooling material, that didn't work for us. We just couldn't find anything. So I went to the elders and asked, here, can we do a program like this? Can we explore and figure something out? And they approved of that project to prepare not only the materials, but also to prepare our classrooms for this particular teaching need. And we named the project Teaching the Occasional Student. And so we just call it the Occasional Student. And we identified teachers in our congregation, in our midst, who were willing to do the work and to be prepared to teach their lesson in turn. And that's kind of unique in the sense of, we don't know when you're going to teach this lesson, be ready to teach it, and we'll let you know when it's time. So we found 6 of us who are willing to do that. We identified the classrooms to adapt to this teaching model because we did have them for all the various ages, and that wasn't what we needed anymore. We needed one for the nursery age, for the little ones. And then we needed one for kindergarten through 3rd grade. And we can go, back and forth between if we need to be a 4-year-old and we need to be a 4th grader, but basically that's our range. The older children are taught generally by the men of the congregation. So we identified our classrooms when we identified our teachers. Well, our strength in this congregation is that we have capable, knowledgeable, and experienced teachers who've taught Bible class lessons for years. Again, we're an older congregation. And not only were they able to teach, but these ladies were able to produce their own materials and to get together their own lessons. They knew what a lesson would look like that they would be comfortable teaching. So we decided first to concentrate on Old Testament lessons to show God to this occasional student. Each teacher committed also to preparing a New Testament lesson that we'll talk more about Jesus that we can use later. But again, we call it a one-shot deal. It's a one-time opportunity. Whatever we teach that child may be more than they knew before. And so we just decided Old Testament, because again, we're not talking about continuity. It's a whole nother way of looking at teaching the Bible class. We found 2 websites that offered free printable Bible class lessons that we can use, truewaykids.com and sundayschoolzone.com. I will say, as with any material, whoever produces it, we did not agree necessarily with every single thing that was said or that's written on there. We chose the parts that we could see were from the Bible that we were comfortable with. But these had materials that with lessons prepared that we could use. We adapted them for our own lessons. Each teacher chose an Old Testament story. I use the word story loosely. It's an account because it's a truth. Story oftentimes indicates fiction to us, but of course this is the truth. But each one chose an Old Testament story account to teach. And then we printed materials from the websites for them to consider, to possibly to use, to choose from, and so that they would have a starting place for theirs. And each teacher prepared her material and her lesson, and with the view in mind that every lesson, her lesson, would be appropriate. She could easily teach it to a kindergarten student or to a 3rd grade student. And if those that have taught school like I have, that's a big range of ability and interest. So we needed the material so that everything, if it's a 1st grader, we know what we can use. And everything, this is a really important point too, everything that we need for our lesson is included in our lesson. Everything. And that was a little hard for us to get with, but it's what we need to do so that when we go into that classroom with our materials, we don't have to say, do I have scissors? Is there any glue over there? We've got it. It's in our box. So that was part of the planning of it. Well, as the teachers were preparing their lessons, we prepared the K-3 classroom. We already had a word wall and a magnetic whiteboard in the classroom, as well as a table with chairs and shelving. Well, this classroom originally was a kindergarten 1st grade, so the table was low and there were little smaller chairs. So we replaced the chairs with 3rd grade sized chairs. Kindergartners can crawl up onto them. They're good. Then we had to raise the legs on the table to accommodate the student, a small change that was necessary to accommodate that range of ages. And here we see, I think I've got shown for you the classroom a little closer up. You can see the things that we had. Word wall, we use it, we take word cards, and as we're telling the story, as we're identifying the characters, as we're talking about the concepts, we put the word on these strips or connected so that the words will sit here just like welcome to our classroom does. We purchased a laminated Bible story map that's a kid version, as it were. We put magnetic strips on the back so we can attach it to the whiteboard, and we have it up so that the teacher can refer to it at any time during her lesson. We removed the distracting books and puzzles and so forth. You see, this classroom is very empty. It's very spare. We removed wall decorations that did not fit the new curriculum because they were just decorations. We removed the bulletin board, the attendance charts, rosters, random posters and pictures that did not absolutely fit in with the lesson. Again, if we were having these children week by week by week, that would be a different situation. But we want these children, when we get them that one time, we want them to focus on the lesson and not on everything else. So that was our purpose. We installed a Bible timeline, and we put posters up that relate to our chosen lessons. So we have a 10-foot Bible timeline, and as the teacher is teaching her lesson, she can go up to that timeline. This is where when in time this lesson is. You see what came before, etc. We use that in our teaching. And of course, we hung it low so that the children it'd be on eye level for them. We also made posters of the lessons that we had chosen. We used lessons from truewaykids.com, again, as I said, a free printable source of children's Bible class materials. And after we had done the lessons and we needed something to put on the wall, but we didn't want a bulletin board, we contacted them, and they graciously provided us with digital images of these title pages of the lessons that we had chosen to teach. And we needed that because these images, in order to print them at poster size, they needed to be formatted for poster size. So they, didn't charge us for that. It's wonderful how they're sharing their design and their work really with others. So we had them printed, I think at Staples, and then we purchased inexpensive poster frames. I found the cheapest ones at Joann's, and we framed and we mounted the posters on the wall. And these are 5, we have 6 lessons altogether. These are 5 lessons that we have. Well, chances are when a child is in the class, one of those lessons is going to be taught. And if it's the 6th lesson, no problem. These are really simple, straightforward. It's no harm, I guess, if that's not the story that they're doing. And we have room, if we wanted to put more posters on this particular wall. But because they're framed, they won't get that shop-worn look, shelf-worn, I think we say, that a bulletin board can when the sun is on it and so forth. So we anticipate these will look good for a long time. We have a teacher workroom. We're blessed to have a room with tables and shelves where we can work. So what we did, though, we wanted it not to be a messy place because, again, everything's in one room, in one box. So we stored a few consumable supplies that we will use again in our teaching and in our lesson preparation. We also have some large items that we use for teaching our lessons, poster board size games and activities that single students can use, and some equipment that we often use, a binding machine with the spines to bind together books, a laminator with supplies. So here are the consumables that we have: dry erase markers, scissors, we have crayons, color pencils. We didn't keep glue or glue sticks. They dry out. They make the biggest mess. So if you want to have those, the teacher wants to have those, we encourage her to bring them from home, or to, if she puts them in her box, to just kind of be aware after about a year, you probably need to replace them. And so I have a stapler in mine, crayons and color pencil, crayons for the younger kids, color pencils for the olders. Here is our binding machine, so we can make booklets with that. Here, our laminator, excuse me, there's our laminator that we use quite often with our materials, and then other things beyond the classrooms. Excuse me. We also have big games, activities, posters that we use for our lessons. I found these big totes that are used in the school system. A poster board fits inside of this. I don't know, there were 6 or 8 grouping that I got. And each of the teachers for her lesson, the one on the creation, here's one on Moses and so forth. You can put these big pieces in there because, again, we're not hanging them up in the classroom, but you can take the poster, you can put it on the whiteboard. You saw those magnets that were there on the board. You can stick it up as you begin your class. It's all right there and handy for us. So on to the lessons themselves. So what we did was we bought from Hobby Lobby, we bought 14 by 14 by 3-inch plastic boxes. And that's enough to store each teacher's lesson. There's an entire lesson in it, like I said, including scissors, crayons, glue stick, glue, if you need markers, color pencils, everything, anything the teacher needs, and material for up to 3 students for the class. So we don't want to overload it, but we don't want to have too little in it. We want it so when she picks up her box into the classroom with the students and opens it, everything's there. So we labeled the completed lessons with the teacher's name and the title, and we put them on the shelving in the classroom. And here you see, this is Judy Dolan's is there, Moses crossing the Red Sea toward Canaan. You can look in there, crayons, color pencils. She's got her books and materials. Mary's David and Goliath. This one is mine on God showed his power to Pharaoh. And the one underneath, you can't see the name of it, but it's a New Testament lesson. So these are the lessons that we are ready to teach at this time in our classroom. Well, so each teacher has one lesson that she has prepared and that she will teach as her turn comes up or as she is needed. And we had a lot of discussion about what's that going to look like. So what we finally came down to is, okay, so a child or children come to our Bible class assembly. Oh, hi, how are you? Glad to see you, the parent. Oh, how old are these children? Oh, we've got a 4-year-old, we've got an 8-year-old, wonderful. And so we welcome them. We say, we have a class for you to go in. The deacon or the elder who's in charge of the teaching program, either one of those men, will find out which teacher has not yet taught her lesson in the current rotation and ask her to teach these children or this child. She's prepared. She's been ready for it. So she knows it's coming up. And so it's just a matter of saying, Sister King, there's children here and we see that you're in the rotation. We need you to teach these children. I said, of course. And so I'll say, of course. So I would go introduce myself to the parent, guardian, to the child. And then at the proper time, whenever it seems appropriate to us, some congregations will have a song and then go to class. Some people go to class first. So whenever, then I'll take the child to the classroom for the lesson. Well, my lesson box, if I haven't gone in there already and gotten it out and gotten ready, is going to be on the shelf, like I showed you, in the classroom with others that have not been taught in the current rotation. That's the purpose of those lessons in there. So then I'll take out my box and I'll give the child or the children some related activity to do while I make my final preparation, especially if they come in a few minutes late and I've already sat down and they come in a little late and we say, oh, we want to teach these children. So I won't have had time to get ready to be as prepared as I might have had I known they were coming. But so I've got something I can give them, a book, a puzzle, a coloring sheet, something I can say, here, do this for a minute. So then we teach the lesson because I've got all the materials and everything there. And we try to have something to give the children to take with them. And then after class, the teacher collects her materials, put them back in her lesson box. There's nothing else in the classroom but her material that's open. So all of that is easy to put back in her box. If she's had 2 students and used the coloring sheets and used the puzzle sheet or used this material or sent the crayons home, then she makes arrangements to replace this. She either tells the deacon in charge or she goes in the teacher workroom later and gets it, and does that. Either way. Then she puts her lesson book in the teacher workroom on the shelf with other lessons that have been taught in the current rotation. And here's what it looks like at our congregation right now. Cindy has taught her lesson on Noah and the flood. Sonia has taught her lesson on Jonah and the big fish. So their materials are on the shelf in the workroom. They're ready to use for the next turn, but we know, and the elder and the deacon in charge, they know that Cindy and Sonia have already taught their lesson. So we don't kind of keep working on them, make them teach them over and over. We take turns. So they know to look in the classroom and see who's up next, whose turn is it next. And we tried other ways of trying to figure it out. This one is the simplest because you're either here in the workroom or you're there in the classroom. So then that's how it works. That's what it looks like. So backing up again, in preparing the lessons to make these lessons, we did not want to reinvent the wheel and start from scratch when so much good material was already available. So we looked at these two websites. Both of them had a good lesson on Noah and the ark. Both of them had a good lesson on creation and so forth. So we printed out the lessons from both those websites and gave them to the teacher. She chose the materials she wanted to use, and then she put together her lesson. The beauty of this as well is, since she will be the only one who will teach this lesson, she tailors the lesson to fit her style of teaching. She's not making a lesson for somebody else. Nobody else is making a lesson for her. She's making her own lesson. So once she has prepared it, it's the way she likes to teach. And those of you that teach, I think you know what I mean. You have a certain way, and that's the way that you like to do. That's the way you feel most effective. But you oftentimes have to kind of work your style in with the material that's already provided. Well, this way, you've got your own lesson just like you like it. In addition to these lessons that the teacher made, we purchased children's books for the lesson when we could find scriptural content that we could use. We didn't have any of this, Adam and Eve with the apple kind of a thing. We just tried to be sure if we were going to use the book that it was one we were 100% comfortable with. The teacher will use this book before or after the lesson. It's just a time to say, let's look at this book, or just a little bit more to confirm the lesson with the child. We printed the teacher's name and the lesson title on magnetic cards. So at the beginning of the lesson, she can put her name and the name of her lesson on the whiteboard. The teacher may choose to use the word wall when she's telling the Bible, giving the Bible account. I like to use a word wall because I was an elementary school teacher. It's what I did. Not everybody likes to. That's okay. It's your lesson. You can use them or not. But word cards were oftentimes included in the lesson. So, some teachers will have them in their box, even though they may not be as comfortable using them. But here's an example of Judy's. Miss Judy, that's how she preferred to be called by the student. And we felt like putting the name up there helped the student, because you tell them your name once, unless they already know you, they're not going to remember. And then they feel awkward because they know they're supposed to call you by their name, but they don't remember your name. Here it is. And the name of the story that they're going to talk about. Moses crosses the Red Sea. And you can use those again for reading opportunities. Here are word wall in use with the story of David and Goliath. These that were provided have the pictures that go with the word, helps the child to look at the words and to know what it is, to be able to tell the story, maybe use it for a retelling. A lot of ways that word wall words are used. Others have word word cards, but they don't have the pictures on them. These we're just fortunate to have those in the printable materials. But that's what we would do with these word wall words. Many of these lessons include coloring sheets and activities to reinforce the lesson that has been taught. We hardly had any craft things with them. We wanted to use our time to teach the lesson, to really, because this is our one chance. We may not ever see this child again. We want to be sure we're spending that time really talking about the content of this lesson, the Bible material. We may have also in the lesson box, she may have materials to send home with the students. I'm really big on that. Some people are not so. Your lesson, you do like you want it to be. And again, one strength of this program is that each teacher can create a lesson both where she is comfortable teaching and where she can be the most effective teacher. I find myself talking less with one child. I do better with more prompts like a word wall. Other people are easy to talk with one child. They don't need or prefer, they prefer not to use a word wall. Everybody's lesson looks a little different, and that's just fine. You are the most effective teacher when you're teaching the way that you work best, the way that you like to teach best. Here are books that we chose. This one is David with Goliath, and we've got some books here that a child can look at either before or after the lesson. And this is some sample of maybe what a lesson might look like here about Moses and crossing the Red Sea. We've got the pencils and plenty of pencils that a child, the teacher might need in the upper left part there. We've got the story for the teacher prompt that so she can tell the story. We've got some puzzles that she has cut apart and put for the child to put back together and talk about the story. So bookmarks, you see color pencils and crayons, and then coloring sheets also. And this material is plenty of things to use to teach that lesson. And it fits in the box. You see the box there on the left, 14 by 14 by 3 from Hobby Lobby. I've not seen them anywhere else, but it's a nice size. It fits on our shelf really nicely too. So what about our unused materials? There's so much. We had so much materials. Rather than store indefinitely or discard classroom materials that we had used in the past, but we didn't have any plans to use them in the future, we donated them to area congregations or to a foreign work that could use them. And we feel like that they were either purchased with the Lord's money from the treasury or from the individual Christians who had brought them. We didn't want to just throw them away if we could prevent doing that. And so we tried to let them continue to be used in the Lord's work. We kept sets of materials for all age groups, so that in the future, if we do have children who attend Bible class regularly, we will be prepared. If we have a child that the family moves in and their children they're faithful Christians and their children plan to be, then we'll switch over to that right away. I mean, it will be simple enough. We kept that kind of material that we can use. So we try not to waste anything. One question that has been asked, how can each teacher be always prepared to teach? I come to worship, to Bible class Sunday morning, and then, okay, Isla, we need for you to teach. How can I always be prepared? Well, I fixed my own lesson, so I'm really familiar with it. I mean, I prepared it, and I look it over every 3 months or so, just to keep it in mind so that, oh yeah, I remember that's what I'm going to do, and that's how that's going to look. Some teachers choose to keep the basics of their lessons with them every time they attend Bible class so that they are always prepared. And they'll have some of them keep an outline of it, or just kind of just jot down what they're going to do so they can look at it real quickly and refresh their memories. For the minute or two that the teacher might need to be prepared before class time, there's a picture book, a coloring sheet, a puzzle, something that will occupy the child until she's ready to begin the class. And also, when our members know that they're going to bring a visiting child to our Bible class, they will contact the elder, the deacon in charge of the teaching program, so that they'll have somebody ready ahead of time. We'd rather be prepared ahead of time, but if not, we are prepared at the moment. So there's lots of what if questions that were asked and that we asked and we wanted to solve out before we started this. What if the student attends Sunday morning Bible class and then they're staying for a week and then they come back on Wednesday night for Bible class? What do we do then? Well, the Sunday morning teacher has prepared enough material that she can teach Sunday morning and then continue that lesson on Wednesday night. You wouldn't want to drag them out for 2 weeks, but you certainly can review on Wednesday night and then talk a little deeper about the lesson. Sunday morning, one of the things we do is to find out, oh, how long are you visiting? When will you, do you think you'll be back? Kind of a thing, so that you're ready. If not, and the Sunday morning teacher is not there on Wednesday night, well, then another teacher teaches another lesson on Wednesday night. Another question was, what if we have a student that comes and for various reasons comes to attend Bible class for several weeks? Well, then what do we do? Well, in that case, the first Sunday morning Bible class, a teacher teaches her lesson. And then we find out from the child, from the parents, that they're going to be here for 3 weeks. So another teacher continues the next week and teaches her lesson. And then the next week, another teacher teaches her lesson. We have 6 teachers, each with a lesson, and soon we'll have New Testament lessons, and that'll give us 6 more. So we can teach a child for 12 weeks. We'll be able to teach a child for 12 weeks if they stay that long. Well, if that looks like they're going to be indefinite, if they're planning to be here, then the deacon in charge of the teaching program will make arrangements for a regular teacher to pick up. And it may be, and we've had the situation where a teacher says, well, I know this child, I taught them this week, I'll just keep on teaching them and I'll make new lessons. And we have some skeleton lessons prepared also that a teacher could take and use with a child. So, or they can pick out the materials. We have those group materials that they can use. So we can be flexible if a child comes more than just one time. Another what if question, what if the teacher who has the next turn is absent when the child or the children come to Bible class? What if it's my turn and I'm not there? Well, we don't really have it as my turn. As you saw in the picture, there are 3 more lesson boxes in the classroom. And any one of the 3 of us could teach. We haven't taught our lesson yet. So it's really not my turn or her turn. It's whoever's turn. And so we're ready. If all of those 3 of us who's got the next turn, if all of us are absent, then the person who's already taught a lesson, we'd say, I'm sorry, they're all 3 gone. We need you to teach your lesson to this child. It's a new child, more than likely. This is that's the whole process here, is a new child. And so she would teach her lesson to that child. We're teaching God's word. I don't think any of us are going to say, well, I don't think I should have to teach twice. We'll be glad to teach our lesson again. And so we've got it covered. Another question was, what if all the teachers are absent and there's no one to teach the child or the children? Well, the way I told them on that, and we're no worse off than we were before. What if all the teachers were absent before and we didn't have anybody to teach them? Same thing. And so we've tried to make a program that will work for when we occasionally have a child to be in our classroom and come to our services, that will be able to, so that we will be able to teach that child, and so that we will be able to show God's love to that child, to impart that knowledge to that child. So I hope that you have enjoyed this program. I hope that you have found something in it, perhaps that you'll be able to use in your congregation. And again, if you would like to have a PDF, just kind of basics of the plan, just email us at questions@olderwomenlikewise.com, and you will receive, we will send you that PDF of that plan. Thank you so much for watching our program this evening, and we certainly wish you all the best.